of Northglenn Channel 8, keeping you informed of events in your community.
I'd like to call the regular study session to order. Joanna, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Downing.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Carol Dodge. Here. Councilmember Snetzinger. Here. Councilmember Malika.
Here.
Councilmember Wayne Dodge.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carrico. Here. Councilmember Whitman. Here. Councilmember Winnicke.
Here.
Thank you. First on the agenda,
The sponsorship guidelines for Parks and Recreation, and Amanda's here to make the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Over the last few months, we've been working with staff have been working with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to develop a set of guidelines that we can utilize as we are both accepting sponsorships, actively seeking sponsorships, and developing our sponsorship packets. For the most part, we accept sponsorships in Parks and Recreation as well as in community engagement through the special events that are done in that division. And we're really looking for a document that will help guide staff through that process. We're not looking to make any major changes to the practices that are already in place, but rather to provide something that supports staff through that so that if any questions do come up, they have a way something to look back to help answer those questions and to make sure that we're treating all of our sponsors equitably and that we're upholding the mission and goals of the department and divisions. I'd be happy to go through it with you, but or I can answer questions. I will share with you the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board did work with us to develop that mission statement, and then accepted the sponsorship guideline as it was presented, with one caveat, and that's that there was a little bit of understanding, though mutual disagreement on the part of the board when it came to the allowing alcohol, tobacco, or drug sponsors to be a part of event. And that really was the driving force behind this. We had a sponsor in the marijuana industry that wanted to support specifically a kids event. And we did decline that sponsorship, but realized we don't really have a policy or a procedure in place to provide staff the support of what do I do when I get that phone call. So the board did want to just bring it to your attention that they did feel they were a little torn on that particular subject, understanding that there are businesses in our community that were supported by voters and that we are utilizing tax dollars that are generated from that industry. Also wanting to make sure that interpreting how things are supporting the mission of the department and division. My intent, and that's why it was brought forward to you this way, was to leave that in the way it's stated. I think it gives staff some flexibility in being able to determine if a specific sponsor, regardless of what their industry is, upholds the mission of the department as it's stated, but did tell the board I would bring that to your attention.
okay, and I had that same concern. I was reading this, and in my mind, I'm wondering, legally, can we deny, I mean, if we put it out to the public and someone comes that is a business that is either a marijuana or alcohol or whatever it is, that you could say, no, I won't take your sponsorship at all. So I was wondering, so I'm concerned about the legality of it.
Okay.
And I was just wondering, have you talked to Corey about
I have
this?
not had Corey review it yet, but I can have him do that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, just how legally, if we can do that. I mean, I think we can take donations, but I don't even know that. I mean, so it's kind of a two-edged sword for me.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have any concerns about?
Why can't we say no?
Well, I don't know, because it's legal. I mean, but if you're opening it to the world, and then someone comes in and wants to give you $50,000, right?
Right.
And you go, no, I don't want to take it,
So just look at it as tobacco.
right?
You're not gonna let a tobacco company sponsor something.
I don't know. Would they?
Have we ever had a tobacco company currently sponsor anything?
We have not. We have had breweries or
Well, yeah.
we have had alcohol sponsors.
Right. But, you know.
But it's the same thing.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so.
Well, I
Because it's
know.
not treated the same.
I'm just concerned. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any issues. It's just, I just am looking at the legality of everything. more than-
And this really is why the board wanted to open it up. They wanted this discussion to happen and some of these questions to be asked so that we could get some feedback.
Right.
But I don't see why, I mean, don't we reserve the right to say yes and no? I mean, there's got to be a point where we have control over it
Right.
without fear of being sued because, you know, somebody can't put a freaking pot leaf on a sign out and sponsor something. You know what? If we don't get your money, you know, then we should be able to refuse somebody from sponsoring something.
Right. But you're-
I think you're probably right. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean,
I don't know.
that you can get away with that kind of stuff. I mean, really, and I kind of looked around a little bit, and it seems like no one allows tobacco ads at anything. I don't care if it's a football stadium or a scouting event or what, but you know what? Alcohol they do allow. So do you mix them together, alcohol and tobacco? I don't know. And I kind of think that marijuana follows the tobacco rule. I mean, but I also think that maybe as times change, and I'm thinking times change, as 10 years, 20 years down the road, you probably need to relook at this down the road sometime. I don't know when, somewhere.
Well, how long is,
Well, I'm just
Back
thinking
when
maybe
it's been
Lori needs to
illegal
look
in
at it
Congress.
before
Yeah.
we make a lot of major decisions, so.
But they increase the alcohol ads then, you know?
gotta have something to fill the space.
I would think that one of the important factors would be the nature of the activity, whereas you would not, in things that we outlaw for youth, you know, we do the same with here.
And that's what we were hoping to achieve by saying we have a mission statement, that activities, a sponsorship must support that mission statement first. And then second, not fall under the sponsorship shall not be considered which promote drugs, alcohol, or tobacco to a primarily youth audience or
Right.
constitute a violation of law. So we were hoping for that support in being able to say no rather than it just being
Just say no.
Which this
Right.
summer, we felt like we were just saying no without.
Well, you would have to separate it. You have to take the, you know, promote drugs, alcohol, or tobacco to primarily youth audience. Obviously, none of that applies. But as you have like an adult type something, like selling alcohol in the park or whatever, for whatever reason,
Concerts.
you know, you can have that, but you still don't want tobacco or marijuana, just, you know, having a booth out there and doing their thing. So you would eventually have to separate those two out.
I think you do too.
Right.
You get the
You know,
separate-
the only concern I have is I think the mayor brought up, or maybe it was Amanda that brought up a great point, is that, you know, these businesses do contribute to our city.
They do.
You know, and we've all seen the list of the tax contributors to our city and where they stand. And so, you know, they are members of our community.
Right.
You know, and so how do we incorporate them? I'm not advocating for them to advertise at a event that involves children potentially, but at the same time, they are members of our community. And so how do you balance that and how do you incorporate them into it? Because they are contributing to what we're doing, you know, and so some people may not agree with it, but we are benefiting from them being in our community. So,
But we are
how do you
only
balance that?
prohibiting this in youth, in youth audiences.
Well,
I think we're talking about it overall.
Overall,
Like, there's a potential
yeah, that's-
of the question of period, not having it, or having it just
Right.
associated
Right.
Yeah.
with kids' events. And I agree, I think the kid events or youth events
Right.
is where probably we want to see specific groups advertising, or sponsoring, but.
Well, like the 4th of July, when we have the permits for alcohol being served, or it's sold, don't they have the tents up? Or
There's
maybe they,
currently no alcohol at July 4th.
Okay.
That one has,
Or wherever.
but concerts have. So we've made some judgment calls already
Right,
as to what
right.
is a youth audience and what is an adult audience. And as we move forward with some of the events that we are planned over the next couple of years, we likely will be seeing, I think, more of this conversation.
Right.
I know there was a presentation done to the Liquor Licensing Authority this morning, seeking that the information to kind of figure out where those boundaries lie legally for alcohol.
Yeah, it's a good conversation. It's a good topic to bring up, because it's something we're going to have to address.
But the way it's proposed here is what Marcy said. None of those, no alcohol, tobacco, or drug products would be advertised at or allowed to sponsor a youth event.
Right.
Anything that was primarily an adult audience would, if the event and the sponsorship were in line with the division or the department's mission and goals, then it would be an allowable use, the way it's presented. But I'm hearing what you would like is for me to go back and ask Corey, one, whether we can legally say no
At
with
least I would like a
with
little
supporting
more.
documentation, and two, I don't know if I've heard a clear answer on how you'd like that brought forward as to whether you'd like to see tobacco and marijuana removed completely or left
Well, you
in.
just put marijuana right in there with tobacco.
I disagree because not all marijuana products are tobacco products.
That's right.
No, that's true.
And to piggyback on Kyle, we not only have the regular sales tax, we've also done an additional
special.
sales tax.
Mhm.
So they're already having to pay more, so I think that telling them, sorry, you're getting enough for our tax dollars to help us build our buildings, but we don't want you in our community, and,
Right.
hide, don't come show your face. I think is a bad message to any of our businesses. But I think definitely keeping away from youth is absolutely, we need to do that, but we also have to define what is considered a youth event versus a family event, and so therefore, if it's a family event, okay, so it's a family, but it's not just youth, so what's that level? I think if we're having beer sold there at an event, then that would be considered more of an adult event, and that would be an appropriate place. But I think maybe that would be one way to help judge which events we could have the other people at, but I definitely keep it away from advertising and sponsoring youth events is a good idea.
And I think no matter what, I think it needs to be done in a tasteful way.
Yes.
I'm not advocating saying let's plaster marijuana leaves all over the place.
Oh, no.
I think it needs to be
Yeah.
done in a tasteful way if it's going to be done at all, even if it's an adult themed event. But I just had a couple things I wanted to say too, Mayor, if I could.
Sure.
One, I think that this is a great thing. I think that Northglenn's been underutilizing sponsorships for a long time. I've seen our fellow
Right.
communities, really utilize these sponsorships. And so seeing us get on board, I think is a great thing. And I just want to give you guys kudos for that. I think that this will really help us, especially with some of the new events that we're throwing out there to help fund those and help get community and businesses involved in these events, and I think it's going to be a great thing. One concern I do have is I was looking at the sponsorship committee, and I see that it involves only two people, one of them being you, Amanda. It's on page 4. And I'm just thinking that two people might, and I guess maybe you could speak to what that committee actually does, but to me, 2 people might not be enough. I know that we just recently hired on an events coordinator, and to me, they need to be involved at all levels. And
They are. It's a committee consisting of the supervisors of each program using
Okay.
sponsorships plus the 2 directors.
Okay, perfect.
So it would be the person in the role
But
of
it's not just the 2
like
directors.
who it is currently. It's Michael Stricker
Mhm.
from Theater and Culture, Deb Lawson with Aquatics and Children's Programs, Brian Magnet with Adult and Youth Sports, Stephen and Jeanette from Events. Have each been a part of that committee meeting.
Okay.
And we are already meeting regularly. We just don't have a formal document to work from.
Perfect. That's awesome.
The only other thing on that, because you don't have the police department in here, and they're the primary organizers of Safe Street. And I think that, that's a large program that we need to still address. So I think
Okay.
making this a citywide sponsorship, because we also don't want to announce all these sponsorships, and we're going to do all the sponsorships for the other events, and then here comes Safe Street, and the police are out there again, counting on doors, asking for sponsorships.
And I will look into doing that. We'll figure out how, I assume then we'll change some language around the mission statements because it would need to support the mission of the city as a whole versus the division or department.
Any other comments? Yes.
I have a few comments.
Sure.
So right now, can the marijuana dispensaries advertise on the mirrors digital?
No.
No.
No. Why? Kansas. It's, oh,
Because it's not legally federally, or you said they cannot. Mile high is made it mandated, so not federally.
okay, all
So
right.
it's a mile high advertising.
Okay, I just wanted to understand that. And then, I think the only thing I worry about is if you have them as sponsors, will that deter people from attending the events and other sponsors and just public support of the events? And I can't even think of one event that is totally an adult event that you couldn't
No.
call a every event we have is a family event.
I would say based on how they stand now, today, the only one that is a very clearly a primarily adult audience would be Metapalooza, which may or may not be the right setting.
Anyway.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we're trying not to make that judgment call within the document, knowing that we would have it. There are other events that could be coming online.
I think I'm wondering, I mean, I'm not against them totally sponsoring, but when you list on this back page the assets, the sponsorship assets, there's a lot on there that I would have a problem with that they would be on. I mean, saying that you're wearing them on your shirts as a sponsor, I mean, maybe certain people don't want to wear that advertising. There's just a lot of things, I wouldn't like to see a half-page ad in the printed theater. I don't know, I mean, can you just have it so, it's like they can't have all of these assets because I just don't really agree with a lot of them, so.
Well, you let them in for a little bit, you're gonna have to let them in for everything.
I
Yeah.
get that, but, you know, that's why I'm not sure that I'm on board for it either, so.
And I'll share the same thing with you that I shared with the Parks Board, which is it would be easier if we had a really clear line that said we didn't accept marijuana industry sponsors. Is that necessarily what's best for the community? And that's the question I'm asking you to.
I get the part about it hurting them, they're part of the community, they should be a business just like everybody else and they want to be a part. But on the other hand, it's not hurting their business if they're not involved. It really isn't. And whereas it might hurt the city if we have it there.
You know, and they could donate, I mean, you know, but then they don't get the.
Right, it's not a
They're-
donor versus
yeah,
sponsor,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the, I just raised the question because I was wondering about the legality and.
I guess your first step would be just talk to Corey and see.
Okay.
And then, I mean,
Give us some guidance
what
as a
our
council.
obligations are.
Right.
I mean, I think we can appreciate people wanting to sponsor, the dispensaries wanting to sponsor something, but, you know, maybe it's just a little too early for that. Down the road, maybe, yeah, but I think right now, it may be a little bit too early to do that. But you're gonna find people on both sides of the fence.
Right.
Would you want us to come back to a study session then, once we've gotten Corey's
I
opinion?
would
or
like
rule?
to hear it.
Yeah.
I would like you to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
I'd like to hear what he has to
that.
say.
You mean come back to study just after you talk to Corey?
Yeah.
Couldn't you just communicate that with us?
Well, we could, but I
answer
think
is-
some of the other questions that have been raised will be answered, or we would spark more discussion after we know which side of the fence
Yeah.
Corey lands on.
After Corey responds, then you'll know whether or not we really need to discuss it further or not.
And we could look at it that
Yeah.
way. I mean, if
Mhm,
there's
that's true.
a substantial change, or if he says there's not a problem, then, you know, we just move on, so. Is there any other questions or comments about this, though? I mean, any other concerns over and above what the legalities and so forth are?
I think it's important to discuss it again, but.
All right.
I would agree.
I don't know, that changes things. I
Okay.
think, like he says, changes things.
Okay, bring it back, you know, because even if one person, and I agree, yeah, okay.
Okay. And we'll also look into bringing that as a citywide policy versus a department and division policy?
Yes, I think so,
Okay. Thank you.
because it will happen.
All right.
eventually.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
All right, next we have Brooke.
Carl's Farm.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight before you is a staff memo and an outline for what we're kind of deeming as our engagement strategy to engage the Carl's Farm family as well as the City Council through an iterative process to come up with a game plan for the future of the property. Let me just start out by saying that end of last year was tasked with trying to figure out a game plan here, and what we struggled with is how do we bring the parts and pieces together in a meaningful way that, one, is relatable to the family as well as to the city. And one of the efforts that we looked at is that Urban Land Institute offers a grant program called the TAP, in which we sat down with those folks to see if this project would be one worth exploring. And what they came back to us with is not likely, but that they have this other program called a developers panel, which is included in here in the program. And so through that process, we sort of came to this sort of machination of what you see here before, which is this three-step process that we've presented to you. One of the benefits to what we're proposing here is simply that the team that would assist us with throughout this process is already doing a lot of the work in and around, or has done a lot of the work in and around a lot of the TOD stations along the North Metro, as well as they're part of the East Lake team that's revisiting their original station area master plan. So there's a lot of synergies here. There's a lot of cost savings involved associated with that. We're still working on the final price, but it's very unique in the sense that I think that if we were to put this out to bid, we would probably see something closer to what we had estimated, which is about between $60,000 and $100,000 to do the same exercise. So the added value here is that we can do it quicker and less expensive, and also take less time in the process of doing the selection for the team.
So as I read this too, I was wondering why staff didn't want to take on this particular process rather than putting it out to bid. You know, because I have confidence that the staff could do it, but wondering why you wanted to get some more people involved.
I think that because this is the last remaining 60 acres that the city has, and that the importance that I understand the council has placed on this, I think that bringing in the outside development community and land use experts to the table is really a more effective and efficient way of getting to the answer more quickly and doing it that will yield a better result than I think what we could do as an in-house effort, or more importantly, as I think the facilitation with the family is I think equally important, and being able to understand what their goals and objectives are as well.
You don't think that will be viewed as impersonal and that we don't want to have a partnership with them or anything like that? Or will we have some representation there too?
The idea is that when we engage the family, is that we would have staff and also potentially council members represented as well as part of that process. So I think it's because when we sat down with them, as I understand, there's 4 sisters. Right. Is that right, Deb? Right. Yeah, 4 sisters. They don't all live here. Mm-hmm. And so part of the coordination here is getting them, they've all agreed that they want to move forward with the project and do something. They don't really have a sense of what that means. And so having someone else who's from the outside, who has the experience of what it means to develop a parcel like this, as well as someone who can also help facilitate the conversation, is equally important.
Because I don't want to lose that personal touch, and they have a trust in the city right now, and I wouldn't want to do anything to sever that.
Right, and I think part of our goal here is if there's consensus tonight to move forward with this, is that we would then reach out. We've already sort of provided the family a copy of this already, but we want to actually reach out and sit down and talk with them and get their feedback first and help vet some of their concerns as well. That's why I say we're still working. This is sort of a work in process right now, but this is where we're at in terms of cost.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Does the M&O property weigh into this, or is it not going to be part of this?
It will weigh into it. It'll be a factor for sure.
Okay. So they will kind of show if it's there or if it's not there, what could happen?
I think what realistically, from an M&O perspective, is that Carl's Farm will likely serve as the catalyst for any real meaningful opportunities for the M&O, but it'll have to first be, Carl's Farm will be the driver, and M&O will be the beneficiary in a sense, as opposed to the other way around, where the M&O is not going to drive what happens on Carl's Farm. Carl's Farm will likely drive what happens on M&O.
So,
Yes.
with the companies that are already involved in so much else that's going on in there, is there any concern that they would look at it with a clear eye for that property and not kind of,
Sure.
I don't know what the right word is, not tainted, but.
Biased.
Biased, yes.
That's what the developers panel is supposed to do, is basically, ULI brings in not only local but potentially national interests that have specialty. One of the things in the development community that we always struggle with is that you have someone who's really good at doing retail development, you have someone who's really good at doing multifamily, you have someone who's really good at doing single family or office, but there's very few development groups out there that are really good at doing mixed use or understanding the relationship between those. And so the developers panels is sort of a consortium of those interests to sort of vet through what the raw baseline analysis is. So the team that we've put together so far is really to compile the fiscal analysis and the data, and not so much drive up to an endpoint as much as help facilitate it.
Mayor.
Yes.
So two things real quick, Brooke. So you were talking about this being the catalyst that drives the M&O building. Has there been any discussion, or do they plan on doing the same analysis on that land that's just north, that's in Thornton, that's vacant? Or is this going to be the catalyst for that land as well?
So right now, part of this team, Leeson Associates and Arlen and Economics, is they have been hired by Thornton to update the stationary master plan, which includes the area that you're referring to, and they're actually doing a market fiscal analysis as part of that. So we're going to have the benefit of the data that Arlen Economics did for the M&O, the updated data that they're doing for Eastlake, and then also their historical information that they've worked on 88th and 104th from a TOD perspective.
So are we collaborating with Thornton right now, kind of or do you foresee us collaborating with them on both of our parcels of land, figuring out?
Right now, under their stamp that they're updating, we are participating as a stakeholder in their project. What we're also, anecdotally, the 120th corridor plan that we're working on right now is looking at extensions of Irma and Race in a meaningful way that connects with Eastlake, that ties into potentially what they're going to be doing up there as well. So we're looking at it from an infrastructure standpoint right now with the 120th study. This is really looking at more from the land use and the real opportunity.
And then you had mentioned council participation. What is that going to look like? Is it just going to be?
I think it's something that is yet to be
council or all?
determined. What they had suggested is only having 1 or 2 council members, representatives with the family, only because of the group dynamic and having so many people in a single room in order to do a visioning process. That's their vision, so much as for, I think, more to help facilitate that conversation. So I know we've had feedback before about concerns about council participation in processes like this, but this was something that they had suggested so as to not exclude council from the process, but to at least provide the opportunity to consider that.
And some of us have more of a close relationship with the family than others do too, so that is a comforting piece to the family. I would
Right.
say.
I can't stress enough that since I've been here is that the Hinkhouse family, I think, are very protective of the property and how they approach and how they look at approaching it. And they did reach out to us last fall to ask us to see if we'd be willing to help partner with them. And what we're trying to do is figure out and that's what really this is a strategy to engage them to where, one, they feel confident and have the trust in us, but also bringing in the expertise that really ensures success with this. So we're trying to strike that balance.
Have you talked to the Lambertsons folks? I mean, they've got a sliver there that's.
We have not as part of this, no. But in previous meetings with the family, we have met with them as well.
And I'm wondering, because, I mean, it's right next door to them, and I think it'd be a good idea if they were involved, so.
We can definitely look at that.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
I have one.
Yes.
For the $25,000 estimated cost.
Yep.
Is the family going to participate in any of this financially?
We've not asked them to.
Well, we're talking about developing private property using taxpayer dollars. And I just can't see us out basically setting up and helping to develop private property any place in the city. You know, it's just not what tax dollars are for. And I think that they ought to participate financially to some extent.
Well, I think a couple of ways to look at that is moving forward, if this actually has legs to it, is that there'd be a way for us to recoup our costs. I can tell you that in the one-on-one meetings that I've had with the family members, they're reluctant to spend any money because they have in the past and had a bad experience. The counterpoint to that, which I think what we feel is a risk factor, is that if we don't initiate this, then they're getting bombarded right now by developers, and we likely have less control as a city as to what really is going to happen there, and that we likely see market-driven factors like multifamily as opposed to mixed use or something else that may be desirable for the city that for the bottom line for the community doesn't have a large fiscal benefit. So there is that issue as well to consider.
And didn't you budget for quite a bit more than $25,000 in the budget for this?
We put a placeholder amount of 100,000.
So I think that's great too, that you're saving money from what you originally budgeted, so.
And I think ultimately, we've always had the perspective that we would try to recoup these costs if we move forward to the future phases.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, Jason. Water, wastewater rate increase.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is some good news on water and rate increases. This is the fifth and final rate increase suggested by the Red Oak study that was done in 2008, I believe. So that's although they were going up, this is the last of that project. So just to go over a little bit of the history, the study was done, like I said, in 2008, and it asked for 5 consecutive years of rate increases. We went through 2009, 10, and 11, took some time off, went back in 14, and then this is the fifth and final in 2015. One of the things that's had an impact on the study is conservation. I was looking at the numbers, and we're actually billing 300 million fewer gallons than we were in 2008. So conservation over the last several years has really stepped up. I don't think that we've lost big industries or housing or anything like that, but people have really looked at conservation. So the rate increases are needed based off of the plan at the time, not forecasting a significant amount of conservation that we've seen, and that's why we're bringing that forward today. The process for this rate increase, we'll put a connection article in May, invite people to provide input. We'll have the first kind of conversation about it at a regular meeting in May, and then the follow-up, I guess, 2 weeks later, with the same kind of implementation date. I think these started in June, and so people saw them on their July bills for the rate increase. The impact you'll see as we compare to some other surrounding communities. The 10 that we compare to, we still kind of fall in line at kind of the mid-level for our rates. From when we brought this last year, all of the surrounding communities have increased their rates as well. There's an article in the Sentinel last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago. Thornton is increasing their rates this year. And the overall impact to the consumer is going to be about $7 a month on average throughout the entire year when you take the usage in the winter being less versus the summer. So it averages out to about $7 a month.
So you said Thornton's increasing their rates, and this doesn't reflect their...
This does not. This does not reflect their increase. I think they said that their average would be about $9 a month increase. So ours is going to be about 7.
I know they had a public hearing on that last Monday, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're moving forward.
Right. So anyway, just wanted to present the information similar to last year's. I followed the same process, following it straight from the Red Oak study. Didn't change anything within that. So we can.
How long do you think these rates are effective for? Till we do a study again, or forever? Is that what you said?
And go up.
I would,
I mean,
think
it's kind of like pay studies. Every time you do a study, you got to change it, so.
It was 10 years ago, and I think
Right.
that at some point, not just in the future, we should do another study, because we continue to have the large capital projects looming in the future that we need to concern ourselves with.
Yeah, and I see that, you know.
Yeah, and of course, these these rate increases have not generated, as Jason said, the amount of revenue that they were anticipated to generate.
Kim?
Yeah, I was gonna piggyback off of that. So where are we at this point in terms of where Red Oak said we should be if we're not gonna do any more increases? How far have we come to that goal that they set and said that we needed to have?
Yeah, we are.
Is that in here and I just missed it?
No.
Okay.
No, because I had taken a look at that. I think we're about 70% of where they expected that we would be. And so in 2008, we were, billing 1.5 billion gallons of water. In 2014, we were at 1.2. So with that decrease in usage, even the rates that are increasing, there's some elasticity there where it just doesn't kind of fit together. So we are, in 2014, we were collecting at basically what they expected we would be in 2010 as far as revenue. And largely that's due to there's less water being used. So I guess that's a good thing on the conservation side. And then the challenge when we're trying to invest in some of this capital infrastructure for facilities.
Right, just because they're conserving doesn't mean that we still need to keep the equipment maintained, so.
Exactly, and so we kind of are in that situation. And then regarding the rate study, it's probably time soon to take a look again. Construction prices change over, from 2007 to 2015, 2016. And part of the study was to help figure out how we would finance and pay for those projects, and probably to kind of hit refresh and see what the cost of those projects are is probably a good idea to see where we're at.
Which to me means another rate increase.
That's very well could be.
Yeah.
Well, the rate study took into consideration the mammoth cost that we have coming up, especially on the sewage treatment plant. And right now, after this increase, we're going to have a little time until we actually have those construction projects with renewed costs. So when that becomes more of a known factor, then we'll know whether or not we have to go back to another increase. But with this increase, we could be looking at 4 or 5 years with no increase.
And I'm okay with that. 4 or 5
Yeah,
years.
oh, yeah. Any other comments,
I was
questions?
just gonna say, when we do the connection, if we could just kind of include some of these costs, because I think when we say that we're doing a rate increase, and there's a lot of residents that are on fixed incomes, and it hits them, even though $7 hits them hard, and I get that, but the other side of it is, this is just a reality of having a city, and it's just an expensive cost, and I would say that my time on council, this is the one thing that keeps me up at night. Just how would we pay for this? Just it's a nightmare. So I just want to be sure that residents understand what the numbers are that we're looking at, that we're not just taking the money.
Right, and what they're being used for.
Right.
Any other comments? Yes, Kim?
Just in terms of the timeline, you want to bring it to council April 27th for first reading, and then have the public hearing 2 weeks later. Am I reading that correctly? You said-
Oh,
Yeah,
I may have.
April 27th
You did say.
agenda?
Oh, okay. I think that I was wrong on that. I think that it would probably be better to have something in the connection first and then
Yes.
go
That's why I was
to.
asking.
Yeah, I think I must have
Okay.
changed my mind
Okay.
after I wrote that. So I think that would,
If we did have the first hearing on the 27th, as long as the connection got out that first, on the 1st of May,
Right.
then
That
that
would be-
still gives people time to be able to come, as long as we advertise that we're having a public hearing and what the date is, that still gives people time to get to there, so we can have a public hearing. So I don't think there's a problem, I just wanted to confirm
okay. Well,
that's what you were thinking.
The two regular meetings in May are May 11th and May 18th, because we don't have, the following week is Memorial Day. I mean, what would be the regular scheduled meeting is Memorial Day.
Like I said, as long as we have, we could have the public hearing on the 18th, and we don't have to have it just 2 weeks later.
Right.
It can be anytime after that, but as long as we make sure that people know and not just rely on the website where the agendas are posted for people to show up, because they won't show up, because they don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll iron out the dates and then make sure that that's in the connection article.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Carol?
I just wanted to add that on Norton's website, and I don't know who to tell this to, probably John at this point, you can actually go on and calculate your water rate.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if that's something that we could maybe implement on our website. I don't know what that
Mhm.
takes, but
That would be a
just
good
saying
idea.
that was a good thing for the public, I thought.
I'm not sure where it is. We do have that on our website.
We do?
Mhm. Yeah, I can't tell you the URL to get to it, but we.
Maybe like
we-
on this page real big like it is.
Website's a little hard to navigate.
Put it up
I know.
there.
Well, that's a good idea.
Let's
We'll
move it
we'll
to-
make it to the
There
forefront
you go.
Yeah,
based
right.
on this conversation.
And
so
keep
that
it there, though. You know how sometimes
Right,
they
for
move
a while.
down?
Okay.
Yeah, keep it up there for a while. So,
All right.
Okay.
We'll talk to the web people.
I had a comment, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Bringing this, right at June, when everybody's water bills start going up because they're watering their yard and stuff, kind of seems like maybe the timing isn't the best for a resident or a citizen. Of course, I know we always do that, but I'm just saying that's the time when people need to water more in their yards, right, or their gardens. So the thought was maybe if we deferred this a little bit later. Of course, at the same time, that's when we make more money off of a raise to fund the initiatives too, because the water bills are higher. So it's a double-edged sword on palatability with the resident versus what we make more money off of, for the project itself. I'm just saying maybe we should think about a timing issue.
Right, and I think last year we brought it forward at a similar time frame, and part of that was because we had waited about 2.5 years to do the next increase. And so that was a consideration with this, is to say, do you wait, or do you just say 1 year, 12 months later, do it again and kind of be done with that?
just do it.
So it's never good timing to make an
No,
increase.
But it's
no
worse
one
when
likes an
you're
increase.
pouring more
Yeah.
water, water in
Right.
your yard,
Right.
but just a thought.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks.
Okay, John?
Okay, in the budget this year, the council added 2 pots of money. One was for the city to be able to respond to requests that we may get from agencies outside of the city for support or for a donation. And that was $15,000 that was added to the council's budget. There was an additional $10,000 that was added to the city manager's budget for promotional items. And those are the kinds of things like sponsorships, for example, where we are asked by an organization to, sponsor a table, but the other side of that is that we get some good public relations, some visibility for sponsoring the event. So as a part of the discussion that the council had at that time was that you wanted these requests to come to the council for a decision as to whether to fund them. And now, right now, I have 5 promotional type of requests that have been made and that are pending. And I've listed them here. And as I mentioned, there are several of them where they have a kind of a table of sponsorship levels and so on. There are several that don't, and they didn't really ask for a specific amount of money. So what I'm recommending to the council are really two different things. One is that We approve a sponsorship for Almost Home, Inc. at the basic sponsorship level of $500, and there's a table in the attachment that shows what you get for $500. For the Metro North Chamber Leadership Development Program fundraiser, and that would be at the gold sponsorship level, which is also $500. And then you also see what you get for that. And then the Community Reach event, which is the Mary Chancio Memorial Dinner, and that would be $650 at what they call the tribute sponsor level. I'm also recommending that we purchase 50 pinwheels at $500 each for a total contribution to Ralston House of $250 so that we can sponsor a pinwheel garden out in front of City Hall so we can show our support of that organization. There was one fundraiser that I do not recommend that we make a contribution towards, and that's the Horizon Booster Club after prom. It's my understanding that very few Northglenn students attend Horizon High School, so I'm not sure that we would want to sponsor that. The other recommendation that I have is that we look at the way to process these types of promotional item requests. And I've laid out 3 different options. There may be more, but one was for the mayor and the city manager to decide up to the $10,000 budget. Another one is to appoint a committee of 3 council members, very similar to the process that we used to have with the outside agency funding committee. And then the third is just to authorize me to use my discretion in the disbursement of these funds, which is the $10,000. Now, on the other hand, I think that if we were to have an organization that came forward and wanted the city to just make a donation to help to support their operations, that it is appropriate to bring those proposals, or those requests rather, to the council. So those are 2 different recommendations.
Comments?
Well, I'd like to see a committee formed of 3 council people, any 3.
Probably the finance committee.
I think that when we discussed the budget, as I understand, 10,000 is John's to do sponsorships for whatever, and the 15 was ours, because we were gonna all do it at once, because we had talked about it a couple of times in committee, and it was decided, no, just bring them all to council.
Yeah, after I responded to you on that, Joanna said no, she thought that the council had actually authorized, or it actually said they wanted these to come back, and so we listened to the tape, and that's correct. So,
well, I tend to agree with Kim on this. I think that the 15,000, if we're looking at supporting some of these operations, I think that a council as a whole probably need to be involved. But it was under I thought that when we added that 10,000, I thought that was your discretion to get Northglenn's name out there on these events and good PR for us. And so I think it just dredges it down and slows the process down on kind of minuscule things that I think that our city manager should be trusted with. I think we need to release the reins on that a little bit. If that's my opinion.
I do too.
See, and I agree with all your recommendations.
okay.
I do have a question on one. I agree with them all, but I'm wondering on the Mary Chancio, since that's this week, isn't it too late?
I did not look at the date, so I would imagine that it is too late.
Or next week.
It's
okay,
next
well,
week.
still,
Next week?
but still, I mean,
But they've been shooting emails out for a couple months,
Yeah,
With
and that's,
logos and-
that would be one of the advantages also of, not having these have to come before council. That could respond more quickly, but, I did not notice the date. I'm sorry.
so what all you were getting anyway for being the sponsor that you were talking about was the dinner, which
Yeah.
is, and listed as a sponsor on the program. If they would still take it, I would recommend doing the service sponsor, because the recognition at the event includes putting your name, they put your name up on a screen that keeps flashing. And Northglenn's always been involved in the Chancio Awards. I mean, we've always had volunteers from Northglenn that are nominees, and I just, we really enjoy that event. So I think if you could do it, I personally wouldn't have a problem with you paying $200 extra to be the higher up sponsor to get the recognition on the screen for the city. But
I think
That's
that's a
if
good
you
idea.
even do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be fine.
So let me just ask you this, so are people just coming to you directly then, John, with requests? Or
I
coming
mean,
in?
yeah, I mean, most of the time, we'll get something, either
Mail.
email or in the mail or something like that. Almost Home, I think Kim was approached by them and she forwarded their request on. So yeah, they come in a variety of forms.
Ways, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel like the event sponsorships is one thing about when people submit requests, and we had this conversation probably 4 years ago, I think, because I remember Susan Klein bringing it up, but when they are asking for the donation amount or a financial support, or they're sending a letter of request, I think that's when I want to see it at council, but not when it's about tables and stuff.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. Anything else?
I have an issue with the chamber. We're paying members of it, we go to all their functions,
Right.
but the way this is described in here, it's financial aid to help the chamber develop the skills of individuals in the private sector.
Well,
So I see the chamber as we have, I can't see where we need to be in their leadership program.
yeah, it's not really, I mean, I'm participating in that program this year. And I don't know how many, but there are a number of public sector individuals who are, and also nonprofits, who are in that program. So it's not just for the private sector. And I think so, and it really has a lot of, my experience is that it has a lot of benefit for people in the public sector, particularly people like me who are new to the community, because you really get an opportunity to, first of all, meet people, but also become much more familiar with the community and what's going on. So, and I think you also saw that Commerce City and Westminster are sponsors this year, and I think the history has been that other cities have also sponsored as well.
Do we know if could any of our staff attend these
Always.
and use it as?
And that was going to be my
leadership?
comment, that
Yes.
we tend not to put someone up. All other cities always have one staff person
They
go
do.
every year.
There.
We
Yeah.
tend not to do that, and it's probably something we probably should be
You know
we
what?
can use
looking
it as
into.
a standard, yeah.
As I said, I'm participating this year. There are, I think, three members of the Westminster Fire Department who are in there. People from Erie, Commerce City, Thornton, no, not Thornton. But I mean, so in other words, you get the picture. And they're at varying levels in the organizations.
But I was just thinking we could use this as training for
We
some
could,
of our
Yes.
staff,
sure.
right?
It's a good idea.
And it's not cheap, but it's, like John said, it's good to get connected with people.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think the $500 too, when I've attended these events, this fundraiser event, it's typically at Venture Golf. And for me, it's more important to have the presence that we never have. The city of Northglenn is never a sponsor on these. You'll see every other city and we're missing, yet we are participants. And I
We've
think
been the
we should-
sponsor in the past, and we've been out the golf thing. It's
It's
quite a
been
few
while.
years ago.
It's been a while. but-
That's
yeah.
right. We
Right.
were on.
I-
As
So
long
I-
as the city staff in some way is getting some benefit, then I have no objection.
Yeah, and I don't have any problem with recommending this program to other members of the staff next year.
I think it starts in January, correct?
No, it starts in September.
Oh, September, that's
Yeah.
right. So probably should be looking at who would you want to send this next year of your
Yeah.
staff?
Create like a scholarship fund for a staff, maybe, is that what you're thinking, like, so that sponsor one staff member a
Yeah,
year for
we
the,
could do
for
that.
the program?
Something, yeah.
We could do that.
You know, and start trying to build leadership skills in some of our staff.
Correct.
I think that
Yeah.
sounds like a great idea, and
Mhm.
we're talking budget coming up soon, so.
Right. Right. I like that idea.
Well, I think that, what is the program when you joined this year? Did it cost you anything? to
Yes,
join?
and I was thinking it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like $8,000, but I think that
No,
might
no,
be, you know, way off basis.
Yeah, wow.
It's been a while since I saw that, you know, figure, but.
I don't think it's that much,
but,
yeah.
I don't know, I don't remember, so, but I'll look, I'll find out.
No, I don't think it is.
Sorry, but.
I went through the program, yeah, and I don't remember paying that much, so.
I was thinking more like 750.
Yeah, something, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll look it up.
You just put an extra 0 on there, and that's all.
That's right.
All right, but I like that idea of that maybe soliciting
Okay.
information
Mhm.
or interest from staff
Yep.
and seeing who would do a lottery system then if you get more than one person that wants to do it. However you want to do that.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very
anything else on this topic? No? Okay.
Okay.
We're good with this. Don, let's see, we have construction in the Northglenn
Yeah.
Alston House. I do not see the chief to back you up.
Yeah.
I know.
Come on
So
up.
you get.
He should be coming.
Put you on the spot.
He should be coming shortly, I think.
He
was-
had a plan, didn't he?
Yeah,
He
that's-
did have a plan, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and actually, I'm not sure what you'd like me to talk about tonight. I'm Don Mosley with Ralston House. I'm the executive director there, and want to thank you all for having me here. I know the chief was going to talk about our new program. I think, I don't want to waste your time, so would you like an explanation of what Ralston House has been doing lately, or just go
think-
straight into this
Yeah.
project?
Well, the idea of tonight was to talk about the IGA and, how that will help us move forward towards constructing the new building.
So I can tell you that at this point, Ralston House has used our funds to purchase, to hire an architect, and with suggestions from all law enforcement and all the law enforcement representatives and the district attorney's office, we designed a new facility for Ralston House in the 17th Judicial District. It will have 3 interview rooms, a medical room, and some administrative space. It will, currently, we have 4 interview rooms for serving both counties. 3 of those are in Jefferson County, and the one that we have here in Northglenn. Already, this year, last year we saw about 52% of our cases were First Judicial District cases, 40% were 17th Judicial District cases, and about 8% were random jurisdictions, primarily some of the mountain towns that would come down. This year already, we're seeing more of a 50-50 split, and we expect the 17th Judicial District to exceed the numbers from the 1st Judicial District, mainly because of population growth. Jefferson County and Gilpin counties are sort of hemmed in, whereas we know that areas like Thornton, Westminster, Brighton continue to grow greatly with their population. So we expect to be serving more children in the 17th than in the 1st. Currently, our Northglenn site, we cannot serve all the kids we're seeing from the 17th. We're seeing kids both at our Arvada site and our Lakewood site, because one room, once we start booking it up, we can't get other interviews in. And so, based on our projections, we think we need a minimum of 3 interview rooms, and we have no medical ability to do medicals in the 17th. The kids come down to Arvada or our Lakewood location to get their medicals done. So this would allow us to do that. So we hired an architect who gave us a great discount and designed a building that would fit on the current site we have, with some additional land to, I guess it would be the east there. And we would be able to keep, with this new plan, we'd be able to keep the current site open until we were able to have the other site fully constructed, so there'd be no time we wouldn't be able to serve kids in the 17th, which was a big concern from all law enforcement. The IGA at this point is being set, we've had the chiefs looking at it, and now the city managers are looking at this IGA. And it's basically dividing, saying that the city of Northglenn would allow this building to be built on their property. It would be, they would guarantee that everyone could use it as a child advocacy center for the next 30 years. That Ralston House would initially be the operator in there, but if we don't perform up to par, we could be asked to leave, and another child advocacy center could come in. But it would be a guarantee from all the cities that this advocacy center would be operating out of there. The estimated cost is about $1.7 million, and that's with a 20% contingency based on things going up, things changing, and that's included in the $1.7 million. The idea is that There would be a funding mechanism for this that all the municipalities would pay. Currently, it is based on populations of municipalities, but, and Ralston House is not involved in this side of things, but I do know that the city managers, and John might be able to speak more to this, are debating, you know, is that an equitable way to do it? Should there be some other way to do it? At the same time as the cities would be looking at funding, Ralston House would be applying with at least 4 different major capital campaigns. The Betcher Foundation, the Gates Foundation, El Pomar, and the Anschutz Foundation to see if they would provide funds for that. But being completely honest, and someone whose agency is mainly funded by grants, until we get the grant, I can't guarantee a cent. We write grants well, we'll work hard, but I can't predict what a funder will do. And we've seen the Gates Foundation has the ability to fund $700,000-800,000. They've also funded projects that have asked for that much at $50,000 or nothing at all. And that would be typical of capital funders. There is not a lot of organizations that want to fund capital. We've talked to Gates and Betcher at least, and this is an unusual thing for a nonprofit to ask for funding that would be used for municipalities, and that municipalities would be contributing to this, but they have agreed that they would, both said they would consider it. And that's sort of, I think, where we're at in a nutshell. I don't know if you have more to add, John, and I'd certainly answer any questions within my scope. I've not met with the city managers. I've just met with the chiefs. I know the chiefs have all said they're in agree in principle with this. They believe we need this center, and that really for them it's working out the exact funding mechanism. I've met with Brighton City Council, who has said that they are in favor of the IGA as it stands, but understand it will be amended, and so we'll bring it back there for a vote. I met with the county commissioners, and again, they wanted to study more the division of the allocation of funding, but in principle, they agreed with the IGA.
I think what's happened really is that as this IGA has been distributed among both the managers and also some of the staffs of some of the communities, more concerns and issues have been raised, and so we're in the process now of trying to work through some of that. I will say, in the write-up that I gave to council, I said that we would, if the council was wanting to approve this at this point, that it would be contingent upon the agreement being based on the population-based formula, and then if there was a change, we'd have to come back to council. And I'm not sure, we've got a meeting scheduled later on this week to talk about some of these things, but it may be that we would also have to amend the IGA with a couple of other issues. On page 3, for example, it says that each party, in item number 6, each party to this agreement covenants and agrees to appropriate sufficient funds in the current fiscal year. And we don't have, of course, we don't have any money. We have a small amount of money budgeted, but not a sufficient amount for our share. And then none of the other agencies have anything budgeted in this fiscal year, so we would have to change that. We're looking at trying to get the IGA approved in this year, so that then Don, when he's doing his fundraising, can say, I have the support of all the communities. But now we've had some other concerns raised about, can a council approve the funding this year, say for next year's budget? Is this council committing a future council? And that's a concern that we would have to work through. Another thing, there were several issues raised with regard to the ongoing operations of the Ralston House once it's built. And on page 4, under number 8, it says that that we would, basically after building the building, we would have to execute a new lease to address ongoing maintenance and so on. And it may be that we would need to look at constructing some sort of a lease or some additional provisions to this IGA to address ongoing maintenance, because that was one of the issues that was raised. And by the way, one of the things that was also raised, but we'd already talked about it, was that the staff would be provided by, and the operating expenses would be provided by the city of Arvada, as they're doing now with the Ralston House in Arvada. And that Northglenn would provide, of course, the property, but also we would provide maintenance on the building itself going forward. So I think there are some things that we still need to work out, but we wanted to see, also want to bring this to council to see what your thoughts would be, if you have any additional concerns,
Why
any
don't we ask
questions for
Jim to
Don or
come
Jim.
up and see if he has any input before we go to questions? Hi. Thank you for coming.
You bet. Made it back from Lakewood, so I'm up here. Actually, the only thing, like I said, we met with the chiefs. I think that went very well. And it's just trying to get it now where we can iron out some of the maybe disagreements on how the IGA is put together. So that's where we're at. Actually, I saw some questions from another jurisdiction, and I was in disbelief on some of the things they asked because they were part of this whole process from the beginning. So we'll work that out, and then hopefully we'll be back with something more concrete.
Okay. Questions?
I just think it's a great example. I'm sorry. It's just a great example of how counties and cities should work together to provide something great for the community, yet be fair based on the population and who's going to utilize the facility. And as far as what we would have to do for maintenance, I'd say, we're going to have it located in our city, so the least we could do is maintain it. So.
Kim?
Who's actually going to own the building? I didn't see that anywhere. I know it's Ralston House, but there's nothing that says in here who actually owns the building. Arvada is going to maintain it, but then we're going to provide the maintenance and.
It's the city of Northglenn's property.
Okay. Well, the property is.
Well, and the building will be too, and that's why we're entering into that long-term lease.
Right,
To
I just
show,
wanted to make sure
because that's
that-
dedicated for a child advocacy center. Doesn't matter if Ralston House has it, which we hope, for the 30 years. But if something happens, there's some things listed in there that where if we were unhappy, we could go to another child advocacy center. But it will be designated as a child advocacy center.
Well, I think that should be clarified, just made, so everybody knows exactly who that is. And I was just curious on the populations and the split out. So you say for Aurora, you just have 12% are in Adams County. Westminster is the same way, but you didn't split them out, where they're Jefferson and Adams. So I was just curious on how.
And this is
that
the
works
reasoning,
out.
and when I was putting all this together, I was trying to, what made sense. Aurora very seldom uses the Ralston House with that 12% population because they use another child advocacy center. Westminster, that's their primary child advocacy center is the Ralston House. And they, even though half of their population's in Jeffco, they never really paid into the Arvada site at all. So what we're saying is, hey, to be fair, and really they're 10 minutes away from this child advocacy center, so they're going to bring, even the Jeffco kids to that facility. One of the things that's happened over the last couple of years, and I don't know if you already talked about this, Don, so if I'm repeating it, please forgive me. Our numbers in 17 judicial are increasing, and by 2017 we're going to be out of space, and that's very alarming, where it's going to delay those interviews. And that's why it's so important that we have the same facility that actually Jeffco has right now, and that's with the 3 interview rooms and the medical.
And I'm okay with it. I just noticed that it was different, so I wanted to just figure out why. And then, Don, you said something about some additional property to the east. Is that still city property, or
It is still city property.
going off of that?
So,
Yeah.
you remember that little vacant, little grassy area it's just to the east of the current building.
Mhm.
There's nothing being used for that. David, with the water plant, he said we can actually utilize that up to that little barn site, so there's a generator sitting on that piece. We figured that just by reworking that site, that area, we can actually start building the building while keeping the other building open so we don't lose service. So when that's done, then we can scrape the current, turn that into the parking lot for the staff. But meanwhile, the staff and the other police departments will use that parking lot just in front of the water treatment.
So it would be replatted and the parcel redesignated.
Yeah, so they
and all
just,
that.
yeah, so they have to
So make sure
rework
that's
that.
in the cost estimates then.
Yes,
So
that was in
Yeah,
the
it is.
cost estimate.
With all of
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marcy?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Marcy?
So just two questions. So the thing that keeps running through my head is that we're projecting that in 2017 you're going to be out of space, and I'm just curious if it seems like the numbers have been higher than projected. Does that seem like the case? And is this building, once it gets built, is it already going to be too small?
I'm going to defer to
Yeah.
Dr.
We're hoping that it won't be too small and that we'll have 3 interview rooms up here, 3 in Jeffco, and on any day between the 6, we can get somebody in. I won't deny there may be days still where we can't get every kid from either Jeffco and all 3 down there, or more likely, all the kids from Northglenn, not Northglenn, the North Metro area, into that. But on a regular basis, we don't think so. We also talked about, would we need more? I think building more than that initially would be an overbuild for a while. And some of the other jurisdictions said, look, if we get that heavy, it's probably, they wondered if it's going to be more towards the east. Would you look at a second location like we've done in Jeffco, where we have one up north in Arvette and one sort of central in Lakewood? And even now in Jeffco, we still have a push from some of the departments to go Bellevue or, Hamden down in that area, because it would allow Sheriff's Department to be down there, but we just don't have the funding at this point to build a 4th area.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah. Jim, I was just wondering, since we've only used it 8 times in the 9 or 10 month period here, is there a reason for that? Is it we just didn't have the need, or why we've used it so little?
I think that's the biggest thing, and it varies, and that's why I think we can't do it by numbers, because the numbers vary, coming up with the amount that you would owe. And this time, we've had low numbers. To me, 8 is still too many, for this type of crime. But it varies year by year. Actually, Don came out and talked with the detectives, and I think they've had 2 or 3 cases come up just recently that said, hey, we'll use the Wells House. But that's just, most of ours have unfortunately been adults. We haven't had the child.
Just another suggestion or thought is, since we'll have costs associated with ongoing maintenance and different things, and as the different cities are looking at this, maybe we should have a line for other people, other costs that are impacted, that should reflect here. So when other cities are looking at this going, oh gosh, this is our share and we don't know if we can pay it, that they can see what everybody's pitching in. And since we have the maintenance cost too, that's going to be probably, 20, 30,000, whatever it's going to be, maybe that should be reflected here as well. Because I know that we're pitching in quite a bit based upon our usage. It's $14,000 per case is the average right now with the 8.
Yeah, but that's 1 year. This is a 30-year deal. So over 30 years, that number is very, very small.
Well, that's actually only 10 months.
Mayor?
Yes.
I want to say, Don, I made it to your guys' event a couple weeks ago, the fundraiser, and I thought it was amazing, and I haven't cried in a long time. Gary Matthews story, that was really rough. But one thing I want to say is that seeing Northglenn's name at that event, I was extremely proud of that. So putting us out there and showing that we're getting involved in the community, I think is a great thing. And so I'm kind of with Carol on it. I think that this investment into our community, it's amazing, and it's what it should be, and the partnership that it's building. And so I'm all for keeping up maintenance. I think it's the least that we can do, and I think being involved in this organization really shows what Northglenn's about, and I think it's a great partnership to be built, because I think they do a lot of really good things.
Well, and the other thing I think is amazing, with operations, they go out there for grants and everything else, and they really don't ask the cities that put in any money towards that. We do all fundraising. So I'm going to give a little blur of that. At Northglenn High School, we have the Pinwheel program,
Right.
and and the Pinwheels represent every child that they serviced last year. So for $5
$5 a wheel, a pinwheel.
Yeah, $5 a pinwheel, you can sponsor one of those children, so we can put it at the Northglenn High School garden. So I'm just throwing it out to you. Just contact the Northglenn Police Department.
I think we just did 50.
We did.
Yeah, just,
Yeah.
yeah, council just, just approved, yeah.
I think it's a good idea to keep those here, though.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
We're going to have a garden, yes.
Yeah, have
Look at
Yes.
our own garden.
That's right.
And I wanted to address the numbers too. What we have seen in Jeffco when we started in 2000, when I started in 2006, is the more we try to meet at least 2 to 3 times a year with each police department. And the more we meet with police departments, the more we've seen cases grow, because initially most detectives still think of us as primarily sexual abuse, although that's only 70% of our cases. What they're finding out now is that when there's a domestic violence, if they interview the child, they get better witnesses and more details. When there's a child physical abuse, they get more details, and even things like when a SWAT team goes into a home in Jeffco, the SWAT teams bring us the kids to interview because they want to find out what the suspect did in the home without re-traumatizing the child. Did they keep that child safe? Did their techniques work? And so what we've seen is as they learn that about any child can be interviewed that witnesses a crime, we start to see those numbers climb for cities. And we've really only been about a year and a half with the 17th of starting to do trainings and having these meetings because we didn't want to step on anyone's toes until then. So I think we'll see numbers grow, and it won't necessarily mean that your city's more dangerous. We never want to think of that, but that more kids are being interviewed in a more child-appropriate manner. Police are getting better investigations done, and that's what we're hearing from the DA's office. And even we had 3 judges come up to us and say, when I see a kid come in our courtroom now, if they don't have a Ralston House interview, we're asking district attorneys, why didn't this one get into Ralston House? Because we believe it's a lot fairer both to the defendant and to the police department, and we think juries hear it better than, people want to believe the police are trying to push it on somebody instead of they're just investigating. So we're finding that too. And then the bad news on pinwheels is
And it is bad
It
news,
is bad
too.
news. We've ordered our pinwheels 1 year ago. We ordered 10,000. We paid for them a year ago. They are somewhere in the LA docks. That this shows how we're a global economy.
That's right.
Our pinwheels, some longshoreman is not unloading it yet. So we are trying, we are on daily communication with the national agency who we ordered them through. And they keep telling us any day, they're close. But I imagine there are other things that are more important than our 10,000 pinwheels from China, but we're hoping any day they'll come in. It may be delayed, but we will get them in.
All right, is there any other, yes, Kim?
I have one more, and this is to kind of piggyback on Marcy. So you're applying for the grants. Some of them can be very, very generous at times. If you're worried about being out of space in 17 when it'll just barely be built, what are the chances that, say you take this and say, hey, we have all these commitments, and somebody says, fine, here, we'll give you the whole amount to build to make it a larger building at that time? Is there any thought into that so that we don't just give all the money back to the cities, but that we take the grant money plus the money being incorporated here and make a facility that you're not going to outgrow when it's built?
I know a lot of the cities, and at this point are saying they would like if we get money to reimburse them. I mean, obviously Ralston House wouldn't argue with that, but I think it would be the city managers and chiefs to negotiate before.
Yeah, that's just been the thought pattern.
It just seems silly to build something that's already going to be too small.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anything? All right.
Thank you very
so
much for having me, for all you've done for us.
So everyone's, has any other changes that they want to make to this, or we'll just move forward?
I think what I'd like, what I'd like to do now is, because of the fact that so many other issues have been brought up since I even drafted up that memo, that we've got, as I said, we've got a meeting on Friday, but rather than coming to the council with really kind of an almost incomplete document,
Right.
what I'd like to do is to hold back until we have some of these issues resolved, unless Don feels that he needs to have the city on board in order for him to go and pursue the funding. outside funding, so.
And he needs it by when, did you say?
He doesn't have a specific date.
I think there's some deadlines on grants, though.
That's what we'd have to determine, what the deadlines, and whether he has to have these agreements in place.
Okay.
I'm assuming Corey's looked at this already, right?
That's what I'm.
Yeah, Corey drafted it.
Okay.
Can you add the maintenance in that I requested, please? The reason why I say that is.
She wants that line item.
Yeah.
Just that it's an ongoing year
Yeah.
after year maintenance cost estimated at whatever it is.
Yeah.
10,000,
It
whatever
is
it
a
is.
cost.
It is, and the reason why I say that is because based upon Vail experience, we know we haven't had other cities always participate at the levels that they should based upon usage. They don't have Vail boards, they don't necessarily pitch in like they should. So I want everybody to see what the cash layout is, so that they understand that we're doing far more than our share for our usage,
Mhm.
but yet it's the right thing to do. So I just
Right.
want people to see that based upon,
That's fine.
all of that other stuff.
Yeah, and I will say too, we'll do that. I will say too, that one of the things that I've found out in this process is that the city of Arvada really puts forth a great deal of resources in order to get their facility going, and now also they're going to be putting forth resources to keep this one going as well.
I mean, they take care of the payroll, they
Yep.
handle all of the personnel, so, yeah, they do a good job.
It really did. I mean, you should have
Yes.
stopped. I mean, having Northglenn's name at that event,
Mhm.
it's never a good thing when a child is, but
Right.
saying that we're, active participants, it really was a neat thing to see, having people come up to me and thank us for our participation, talk about John and Dave and Jim. I think that's really a good thing for our city and our community.
Absolutely. Okay.
Les, along with your thought, do you want the cost of the land shown as well? Because that's a
That is an
pretty big
expense.
investment too, so.
But it's just a lease. we still
Right,
own it.
not so much that, I'm just concerned about, based upon other things we've seen in the past when Vail supports that organization or that site, we've had large cash outlays, and not everybody's contributed like they should have, and I just want that expressed. So not so much the property, even though that is a big deal, I just think the maintenance on what elements we take care of should also be reflected.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? No?
Okay.
All right.
Thank
We're
you.
adjourned.
That was a good
Thank you
plan.